Firstly, just for some transparency here, I drive an EV vehicle powered by coal. So, being a good consultant,
should be a consultant.
as a good consultant, I've covered my bases here. And also, they stuck stuff on our ears. This is not a sympathy thing for Donald Trump. It's just to keep the microphones working here. So thank you very much. So yes, I'll quickly introduce the panel. On our far side is Nikisi Lesufi, the CEO of Senior Executive Environmental Health and Legacies of the Minerals Council. Next to him is Parshant Goyal, CEO of Jindal Africa. Then we have sitting basically between myself and Tseliso is Mathews, Senosi, the CEO of Overlooked. And then we've got Tseliso Maqubela, the Deputy General of Minerals and Petroleum Regulation. Thank you. And I see you also, Nikisi is on the Minerals Council. So that's good to see. We have got a good representation here. Great. So putting the context of coal has got a moment at the moment. I don't know if you guys have seen, but coal's hit a little bit of a good spot. If you looked at the European Union elections, the Greens lost quite a bit. The voters are a little bit anti. And Fortescue in Australia is dumbing down on their hydrogen. If you look at the Paris climate change of 2015 to now, coal has actually increased by 11% in output. In 2023, China built more coal manufacturing plants in the last decade than ever before. And the European growth of coal is between 5 and 6%. So we've got a moment over here. It seems like coal is doing its thing. But the question we have to ask ourselves here is sort of, what does that impact have for Southern Africa? What is the current landscape of coal in Southern Africa? Where do we see the growth? And who are the big players that will be here? So I'm going to ask Parshant first. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. So we, as a Jindal, we are into coal mining, iron ore, we are into steel making and power plants. So we are for the coal, and it is not going to finish immediately, because the transition period, it will take 20 to 30 years. Like, just for an example, last year there was a snowfall in South Africa, and on that day the solar, at that time the total solar capacity was 6,000 megawatt, and it became to 60 megawatt on one day. So what will happen? So it is the base load which we require, and base load at present is mainly for coal. Like Eskom, they did a big study that their power plants can be shifted from coal to gas. But in South Africa, where we have 30 billion tons of thermal coal or anthracite coal, so it is a very lucrative equation for South Africa to run the plants. Yes, there are now technologies which are coming to reduce the emissions. Like, there was a small plant which was installed in Kelvin power plant to take the emissions out, where they were showing that SOx and NOx, it was coming from 230, 240 ppm to zero. So there are technologies which are coming to make it clean. So we cannot avoid coal. So coal has a very good perspective in future also. In South Africa, around 80,000, it's a direct employment, and around 170,000, it's indirect employment. In 2022, South Africa only did 75 million tons of exports of coal. So when the economy is based on, big part of economy is based on coal, so we have to go for coal. And yes, It will take some time, it will take 20 to 30 years to fully transit to renewables or something else, but coal will be as a base load, we have to consider coal as a commodity. Yeah.
Thank you. Mathews, what do you think? Where's our future? It's looking good.
Trying to address your question, where do we see growth in the country for coal? We know traditionally we've had the big four, the big five, big corporates that were running our coal industry, the likes of Anglo, the likes of BHP, you had Sasol and Exxaro, which was the former Kumba. So we have seen that changing in the recent past, where we saw Thungela being spun off from Anglo. You've got Seriti now that took over the former BHP mines or South 32 mines. And then you've got, fortunately again, a lot of other junior mining companies that are playing the space. So challenges of that is now you've got an industry which is now labeled to be dirty, no bank finance behind it, now being played by junior mining companies without those big balance sheets that can support the growth that your question is relating to. Yeah. So I see the growth in the coal mining industry coming from these juniors, but obviously the industry and panels like this must start solving that question. How do we make sure that what Parshant just said, that we have to make sure that coal is part of the transition, is part of the energy mix, it supports the base load. So how do we make sure that it is an industry that can be sustained into the future? So let me tell you about what we're doing at Overlooked. We are currently producing just under 10 million tons per annum of our thermal coal. We're planning to go to 12 million tons, which is like 1 million tons per month. And we are also part of the MC mining group, where we've got massive resources of steel making coal, hard coking coal. So in the coming year, I just reported what we're planning to do in our thermal space. We want to start the flagship Mercado project, which we're producing hard coking coal. That's a 4 million tons per annum on phase one, producing about 1 million tons of hard coking coal. And we are juniors, so that is where I think a lot of activity is happening in smaller companies like ourselves who start looking at the industry differently and start looking at finding ways of developing our resources. It's definitely not going to be as easy as it used to be when we had a lot of listed environments supported by private equity. We have to find more innovative ways of funding coal. And the answer lies in rooms like this, in getting the industrialists that have been developed by the country from the past coal mining that was done by the corporate to further develop this coal mining sector. Our industry, the world needs it. We have seen that without coal, you can be happy, but in the dark. So if we want to not feel cold, if we want to develop our country, which we need, we have a lot of joblessness. We need to make sure that we can industrialize. And ever since the early 1900s and the late 1800s, we have seen that coal has been pivotal to that growth in our country. So it will make sure that it transitions us into this new era where we are going to have cleaner energies that come to the front. But we mustn't forget that coal as well, as an energy mineral, can also be clean. So the question is rather, how do we make sure that we can support our industry to make sure that we can make coal cleaner? So I went to a conference in India which was labeled making black coal green. So maybe some of the questions that we should be asking is, how do we make this coal green so that it can continue to supply our baseload needs? That is so important for us to industrialize the South African region, which is a gateway to the rest of Africa.
Yes, thank you. So Matthew, you spoke about the steel-making coal. Are you going to put in a bid for the Anglo assets in Australia? Just asking this. They say the fire will go out one day. It's a given.
We'll think about it.
Tseliso, your view?
Okay, so Our view, because I speak here as a member of the department,
Yes.
so I don't have a personal view. When I speak, I always carry a mandate of the department.
Yeah.
So as far back as 1998, we realized as a department, then we were called DME. We've since changed 4 times. I think now we're DMPR. We realized that to sustain energy in the country, we need to diversify, but we'll need an energy mix. So that's the starting point. And we've never wavered from that. And coal is a fundamental block of that energy mix. It will remain like that for a while. We have power plants. If I talk about the present, we have power plants that are going to run well into the 2050s, and they are going to require coal. We also have an economy in Mpumalanga, in Limpopo, that is reliant on coal in terms of job creation, but also this is coal now destined for export. So we firmly believe that to sustain this economy, we have to ensure that we service the international market with coal that is produced in this country and end the foreign currency that comes from that. Now, I think, having said that, climate change is real. And there's got to be a change, and I think the government is leading by example in as far as that is concerned. So we need to, achieve what was envisaged in the energy policy white paper, the energy mix. And I think the introduction of renewable energy, is beginning to lead us in that direction. It's also important that we understand that we are going to need a lot of gas to be able to sustain the cleaner forms of energy like renewables going forward. I think if I look also beyond our borders, countries just next to us like Botswana and Mozambique are beginning to look at the future of coal. So there is a future for coal even in the rest of the Southern African space. I've spoken about the contribution to electricity. However, it would be remiss of me not to talk about the coal to liquid. Because in South Africa, when we talk about the contribution of coal, we forget about the fact that we get at least about 12-13% of our fuel from the CTL plants run by Sasol. They employ a lot of people again in Mpumalanga, and some of that coal, of course, is also exported and generating revenue for the country. So there is a future for coal, but I think we must accept that there is going to be a growing renewable energy penetration into this energy mix. And of course, as you heard from the Minister of Energy, there's also now going to be a focus on nuclear energy going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. It's interesting about the energy mix there is in Queensland, Australia, it's 49% coal, 27% renewables, and then the rest is gas. So they're trying to make that mix work well for them. We've heard from the department now. Now we'll hear from the Mineral Council. Nikisi.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's not the issue of the future of coal that is at stake. It's the developmental needs of South Africa that is at stake. Because we need to discuss the future of coal in the context of coal being a fundamental precondition for economic development. Because without the immediate energy potential of coal, there will be no discernible economic development. I'm saying that because we need to appreciate the fact that in the immediate term, coal is still going to be required. In the intermediate term, coal is still going to be required. And in the long term, coal is still going to be required. The proportion may not be the same, but the fundamentals will still be the same because of the energy security that it provides and dealing with intermittency of all the other sources of electricity. Now, from the Minerals Council perspective, there is a commitment that members of the Minerals Council need to undertake initiatives that moves the economy to a low-carbon economy. And therefore, the coal members have got an obligation as well to undertake initiatives that moves the country to a low-carbon economy. This morning, you've heard from July, you have heard from Mike, and other CEOs say, who will tell you what each individual company is doing. But collectively, we worried that there is no concerted report that indicate the journey that these mining companies have traveled in terms of the activities that they undertake to ensure sustainability, but the technology options that they also deploy to indicate their transition to a low-carbon economy. So you've got companies like like Seriti, as we have explained this morning, where they have deliberately and intentionally have got a renewable energy initiative, and so have all the other coal mining companies. So you can see that it's not only the talk, but there's discernible action on the ground that indicate that the mining companies are taking the move to renewable energy seriously. That's number one. So the reporting is not in the public domain, and we are in the business of trying to collate that information so that we can share with the public what the mining companies are doing, in particular the coal companies. Secondly, or thirdly, in the Mpumalanga region, I think it's already been indicated that Mpumalanga is highly dependent on both the employment opportunities that coal creates, but also the activities of Eskom in the area. And therefore, there is a need for collaboration amongst all stakeholders to ensure economic resilience in terms of when the progressive closure of the power stations, the progressive closure of the mining activities, that there is a discernible economic succession. And therefore, we've got a project called the Green Engine that looks at opportunities that are created by the closure of mines and new strategies for closing mines, that we no longer have to cover the soil cover the degraded land with topsoil and plant seeds, and we have got the green grass. But we want to look at the opportunities for economic succession, new economic activities that uses the assets and liabilities that are being left behind by the mining activities, and create new entrepreneurs out of the opportunities that are created by the closure of mines. Therefore, we are moving away from the concept of normal closure of covering up and, with a lick of cement, and making sure that, there's environmental sustainability, but we also want economic sustainability after the mines have been closed. But in terms of whether there are new mines coming up, in the Minerals Council, we haven't seen that. We still have got the big 7 plus 18 other coal mines, where, mostly the maturer mines supply Eskom and also have got export opportunities, whereas the newer mines have got shorter-term contracts with Eskom, but most of them are looking at the export market, and there are challenges with the Transnet issues. So there is that kind of debate that is taking place, but the directional intention is that there is a future for coal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we're discussing the whole green side then, and obviously we need to speak about the energy transition. How is the mining industry in Southern Africa looking at the energy transition? How are we tackling it? And I think we got a Just Energy Transition partnership with, we've got $9.8 billion US, and we've seemed to, as a country, has slipped a little bit on that, a little bit backsliding there. So that's from a government point of view. So So how are our miners handling it differently, where we don't allow kind of the energy transition slippage not to sort of become an afterthought in our mind? So what technologies are they doing? I mean, you mentioned some, so I'll ask sort of like Mathews, how are you looking at the energy transition as a junior miner, if I have to be honest?
Arjen, I think the first thing is embedded in the ESCOM policy, where you can start seeing that they are looking at this high efficiency, the HELE technologies, where they start procuring higher quality coal. I mean, that is energy transition. Instead of burning coals that are less efficient, that creates more carbon dioxide during the burning, now you start burning higher energy coal, so that reduces the emissions per energy, per kilowatt produced. That's number one. Now, in the earlier forums, again, you had CEOs talking about what they are doing themselves, where they are creating some renewable energies. We are doing the same as well at Overlooked. We looked at our land parcels, the land resources that we have, and number one, we're developing solar farms on those land parcels, and the first offtake will be the mines themselves. So the energy produced eventually from the coal that we mined, they would have less carbon footprint. So that is what we're doing. So we're firstly starting by on our land parcels, building the solar farms. And number two, we are also looking quite seriously in the excess energy that we'll be creating to look at the water that we have underground as well, that is currently wastewater, a liability that we must deal with long term. So we're looking at that to say, can we take this wastewater as well, utilize the cleaner technology, cleaner renewable energy to create hydrogen, so that we can then transition into the hydrogen economy when it happens. So that in the main is what we're doing for the transition, and looking at the transition as a junior mining company. But we're also looking at, what else can we do with these defunct mines one day? Can we start taking the slurries that are left in these ponds and make that part of the transition as well, cleaning them by beneficiating them, whether into pellets or whether we clean them and still supply them to the transitioning energy mix. It's also taking care of the environment, and it's also part of the transition. The biggest thing is, what are you transitioning from? We're transitioning into a cleaner energy production. That doesn't mean that it doesn't have coal. It means that as a nation, as the world, per kilowatt produced, will have less carbon to a world where one day we'll have zero carbon emitted into the environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Parshant, how is Jindal looking at this?
So, we are not have a very big presence in South Africa, but we are doing quite well in Mozambique, where we are producing around 40 million tons of coal. We started with 8 megawatt small captive power plant, where we introduced as a line injection to reduce the emissions, and we are successful on that. And now in our other mine, we are going to install a 300 megawatt power plant. Yes, we are installing solar panels also for 1 megawatt, 2 megawatt, and now our plan is to go for 75 megawatt in Mozambique. In Botswana, we are going to set up a 700 megawatt thermal power plant, but we have, even for the camps or for the construction power, we have already installed the solar panels. We are going to start 1 megawatt by first week of August, then around 100 megawatt, 50 into 2, it will be in next 24 months. So we are on both sides. We as I told you, that baseload, it will be from coal only, because that is the source of energy we have. And when God has given us so big reserves, so there is a purpose to that. So if we have to find the technology that how we can reduce the emissions, and we are working on that. Like one is, it is on the cheaper side, that injection of lime that reduces the emissions, and then this carbon capturing and FGD, all those technologies we are already implementing to make it more cleaner. But yeah, we will be using coal. And also, when we are washing the coal, we are improving its CV. There is a waste where there is a carbon content into that. So what we are doing with that? If we are putting efforts to take out it from the earth, and then we are just wasting it, it is dumping it to the dump yard. So we should utilize that also. So in Mozambique, we are going to use the discard also, around 50% of the discard, so that it should not burn, or by spontaneous heating, it should not burn itself and liberate the noxious gases. So that is also a way to make the environment more clean. Thank you.
Thank you. Tseliso, I mean, I've heard everyone is doing something. I like the way Swedi says it, it's more a energy mix. It's like we're not coal miners anymore, we're now energy miners. But to be honest, I think we are still digging out coal to make our money. I don't know if that came across, but how's the department helping with the whole energy transition and where to put focus, technologies even, because not all the junior miners are got all the big money to get the new technologies.
Okay, so first of all, I think the role of government is to ensure that there is a policy and regulatory framework that enables, the transition. I want to just say that, the justness of the transition, if you look at us as South Africa and the rest of the developed world, I think we believe that we need to be treated fairly and equitably as a country. And this has been raised time and time again by our leadership. And I think our partners globally perhaps are opting not to get the message. I think one of the things that has been introduced in Europe, this carbon border adjustment mechanism, actually, first of all, the mining companies in the country need to take it seriously because it is real, but whether it is just and equitable is another matter. We don't believe that it is just and it's equitable because, one, the contribution of our country and the rest of the African continent to global warming as well as carbon emissions is negligible, to be honest. But we are now, when we are supposed to be enabling this green energy revolution by making use of our minerals in the continent, there is some penalties that we have to suffer to get the same minerals that are going to enable renewable energy going forward to thrive. So there is a problem there. But I think as a country, we've led by example on the renewable energy independent power producer program because the policy was there. Yes, at some point it was disrupted, but I think it has proven, which is why there are companies already that are operating in the space.
Thank you. Nikisi.
Yeah. Yes, I think from what Tseliso is saying, I think I just want to confirm that we are seriously concerned about the CBAMs. Just from a position of being out of a policy that is being implemented out of the global policy agreements.
And just tell the audience what that is. Not everybody here speaks your code. A carbon border adjustment.
The carbon border adjustment mechanisms. A policy that has been developed by the EU and a policy that is being developed by the UK. The purpose of the policy is to arrest what is called carbon leakage. That is, if you manufacture a product or you export any material into the EU, it will have to be determine its carbon intensity. And on the basis of that carbon intensity, you'll have to pay a charge. So basically pay a carbon tax on the material that you produce. Now, as you would understand, if other sectors, maybe in quotation marks, may be able to absorb that tax in the context of passing it on to the end consumer of those materials. That if, if the production of our agricultural practices in terms of producing oranges, narkies, and so on, and they need to be exported, and there's a carbon intensity attached to them, the price of those narkies will simply go up and the consumer will pay. But in terms of minerals, the mining industry does not set the price of commodities, and they will need to absorb that tax. And if that tax is unaffordable, then it makes mining unsustainable. So we have engaged the EU and the UK government on this issue, but also we want this issue also to be discussed in the climate change discussions, because it doesn't take into account the principle of a common but differentiated approach. And that principle dictates that those who contributed more to climate change has to do more and assist those who are feeling the impact of climate change but have not contributed significantly to the climate change, but are feeling the impacts. So that's the principle of common differentiated approach. And the CBAMs does not take that into account. It puts the whole burden on the developing nations to be able to undertake the necessary mitigation measures to ensure that carbon mitigation has taken place at the area of origin, which we think is unfair. Thank you.
Thank you. Bernard, are you going to ask some questions?
I've got 1,000 questions.
No, so we'll carry on then.
So you've lost your opportunity to carry on. So there's a question which often comes up, and perhaps it should go to the junior miner. Now, if July was here, I would say July is now a junior miner in Thungela. But so the worldwide game is you pass your assets on and you leave it behind in the hands of Thungela, not so junior, Seriti, not so junior. You're a true junior. And are the juniors, is there a risk that juniors are not financially equipped for responsible closure? People assume smaller guys are going to just screw up on the way out. Is that fair?
That is not probably fair because things are regulated. Whether you are a junior, there are barriers to just do things as you would want to. You have to comply to all the environmental laws. You have to provide for your rehabilitation. So it's not fair to assume that if you do not come from a big corporate, you're not going to be responsible when you close the mine. There is an environmental provision that everybody that starts digging little dirt has to put in place. And there is also regulations and visits from the regulator to make sure that whatever you do is responsible and you have continuous rehabilitation if you can do that. So I think it's a totally unfair assumption.
So Mr. Lesufi, how do you, because it's obviously your job, where's that question? Now, how do you plan to deal with the 6,100 derelict and ownerless mines? Is there an opportunity to rehabilitate and repurpose land? So this is a big theme often. The state, when it suits us, use it against us as an industry. So now what? What are we doing with those mines?
I think the context is right, because you need to be able to define the problem appropriately so that you can have the adequate response. So the 6,000 mine sites that are regarded as derelict and ownerless, these are the sites that predates some of the regulatory prescripts that are currently in existence, and therefore they are a legacy of the industry where not individual mines were able to deal with that, but the collective industry, including government and the industry, have to deal with those issues. And to that effect, we do have a team with the DMPR that looking at the prioritization of these sites, where interventions are possible, where remedial measures need to take place, remining opportunities, and so on and so on. So we are looking at innovative approaches of dealing with this thing. But I just want to place on record that it's not the responsibility of individual mining companies. Is the responsibility of both. Actually the responsibility of the state, but individual mining, collectively the associations in the country who deals with mining needs to partner with DMRE to deal with these issues. And we are doing that. I mean, I'm just not talking about it. There is actions that we are taking in terms of supporting the police, supporting our members, sealing holes where they are nearer their mines, assisting with the security arrangements in terms of access control to these sites and so on. So we do regard it as a real problematic legacy of the industry, but we need to eat it in small chunks.
DDG, let's flip a coin. You or me, who's going to tell the minister that this audience of credible, educated, smart South Africans in the industry doesn't trust him or the government to procure nuclear? Who's going to tell him that? Okay, let's move on and stay friends. Somebody has to tell him that, hey? So, like 20 years ago, I mean, perhaps 21, 22 years ago, Tracy and I may still have been dating. We went to Botawil. The business chamber, they invited me to come and talk about the opportunity of gasification of coal. They gave us bad pea soup. You don't go to a boeregemeenskap and expect pea soup, but anyway, I'm traumatized by it. But what is the view on underground coal gasification to then run electricity generation? I mean, right now, Tennyson is the new hotspot. I mean, this is not a new movie. This movie just moves from place to place to place. Have you got views?
So, as government, if I can put it that way, we are supportive of underground coal gasification. And why do I say this? We have had applications that have been supported even by the Minister of Environment.
And Tennyson is one of them? Just to close the loop with the question, do you know?
Well, I think there are challenges depending on where people apply. Usually there is a conflict where somebody else is doing something else on the same piece of ground. And why this has not taken off is that those conflicts have not been properly resolved. So we are excited about the Free State, the gas that is there, the potential for, coal bed methane in the Free State. But I think we have to then resolve the competing rights and be able to deal with that. So but I just want to maybe take advantage, Bernard, and say that I think on the issue of rehabilitation, it's actually an opportunity. It's a huge opportunity to create jobs. We just need to package it because those unrehabilitated derelict and ownerless mines actually can be, sites for people to actually engage in meaningful work.
Now you speak to one of the few believers, but then the way we cleaned up asbestos during the state capture days is not the model to do that. Mathews, how does innovative funding solutions for junior miners look like? What comprises such a fund?
That fund probably has to have some developmental state institutions like IDC leading that. You'll obviously have some traders for international coal trading. And you have normal citizens like ourselves who believe that coal will be an important part of the energy mix, therefore it needs to be funded. So somebody like Bennett Swanepoel must start that.
Yeah, no. I mean, if only Paula gives me a break in all these bloody conferences, eh? There's quite a, because it's anonymous, I can say there's quite a naive question. Because the naivety sits in, given the capitalist and competitive nature of the world economies, which is naive. When America can't compete, they impose 100% tariff. So that's the naive part of the comment. Who does the government expect to treat them fairly and equally? So there's this narrative of you guys had cheap coal-based power, oil-based power, and now you want to impose on us the global south. So, I mean, it's fantastic from a victim mindset, but in the world, does anybody really care for that? Do you think that lands in the north?
Well, I think the first thing is to talk about it, so that people are aware that, you know, we can see what is happening. And then begin to also talk to other, even climate change activists, to say, but this is not fair. And then you mobilize the rest of society to begin to knock sense into some of the leadership of the countries that are imposing CBAM, to say, but how fair is this? And I think through that you can make a difference. Yeah.
Sorry, Bennett. It's an integrated approach. It's not a singular lens view, because it's not as if the global south doesn't have a response mechanism to the CBAMs. It's not a victimhood approach.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
For instance, they've got the capital, we've got the resources. And we're moving into a period of the requirement for critical minerals. And the critical minerals are in the global south. And therefore, there is going to have to be a discussion between the global north and the global south in terms of the terms and conditions of access to the market and access to capital for mutual growth.
What is interesting is we just had a really successful so-called London Indaba, where we spoke about, you know, Africa's future, contribution, to or mining's, how mining is part of Africa's future now. Africa is part of the future of especially critical minerals. And I mean, it was a fantastic conversation because you can deny that Africa is going to be a major contributor. I'm narrowing it down to Africa, not the global south.
Yeah.
Because the global south has got some northern countries in. I get confused. I mean, a final question, Parshant, if I may. Yeah. Are you glad that you're mining coal in South Africa? Do you plan to mine more?
Yes, because as I told you that we want to be the leaders of the base load in this transition period, maybe 30, 40 years, when we can get the full transition to renewables or some other technology. So we want to mine the coal because that will be the base load. Even just I was visiting Zambia, so they are not getting even power from Kariba Dam because the water level is so low. In Zimbabwe also. So there is how it will be refilled. It has to come from somewhere. And solar at present or wind is not that much established that it can be filling the gaps. So coal is there and we are happy to mine the coal. But yes, we are also beneficiating that coal to make it cleaner.
Again, thank you for the questions. I don't always agree with the questioners, but that's not my job. I just abuse my position to say so sometimes. And thank you for the panel. We ran out of time, otherwise there were many more questions. And listen, I sense that you've relocated to Australia because with all your Australian context, drop that next time. Eh? We don't care. They don't play rugby. We don't care what they do, so leave them there. Yeah, they still work. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.